I am Marcella Boyd Cox. Cox is my married name, but I've lived in Cleveland all my life. I grew up in the Glenville area, have a brother and sister, and we all are in Cleveland now. We all work together in the family business. Okay, so our business is E.F. Boyd and Son Funeral Home Incorporated. My grandfather founded the business in 1905. His name was Elmer F. Boyd, and then he married Cora Boyd in about 1910. But he opened his doors in 1905, I believe it was like on 25th and Central. He had a couple locations on Central Avenue, and then he moved out to 43rd and Central. And then in 1938, about 1939, my grandfather purchased. The funeral home is now at 2165 East 89th, right there on the corner of the intersection of Cedar and 89th. So we're very proud to have right now 4 generations of family members in the business. My brother and sister both have a daughter that works in the business. Okay, both my parents actually were born in Cleveland, but their parents, on both sides of the family, came from Southern Ohio. They came from, my grandfather on my dad's side came from Urbana, Ohio. And then my mom's family came from Zanesville, I believe, yeah. So there's all Ohioans, but originally the family came from Virginia, moved from Roanoke, Virginia. And these studies that I have done on Ancestry.com, they came from Africa and came through the ports in through Virginia. There's some portions of my family have done a real depth in study of our family, of our lineage. And so I've got an article I just brought with me, and it says our family began when Nancy Waltham, a member of the House of Waltham in England and of the Anti-Slave Society, believed the way to free slaves was to marry them and bring them north to free country. So Miss Waltham married a slave named Frank Corbett from Roanoke, Virginia. He was the slave child of his master, Frank Boyd, whose name they used when they entered free territory. And then this family, it says, settled in Pretty Prairie section of Champaign County. And so my family, they come from there, yeah. And it's been really interesting to read some of this material. My grandfather's father was named William. He came from Urbana, Ohio. Just a couple years ago, they started a Black Heritage for Juneteenth kind of celebration weekend. And my daughter and I traveled, my first time I've ever been to Urbana, and was able to see the home where my grandfather, William, raised his family. It was just awe-inspiring. It had turned out that we were in like a group of us during a tour, walking through the city, had a walking tour, and it turned out one of the women that was in this group turned out to be a cousin of mine. I've never met her before in life, but it just really was striking and made such an impact. We kind of keep in touch. She lives in the Columbus area. But yes, I have a lot of relatives, it's turned out, I don't even know. Yeah, it's unfortunate because I think that's what sometimes a lot of people just don't get that opportunity because we haven't had that maybe family reunions to kind of bring all that together for us. And so, yeah, I just appreciate it. I plan to go back this year for the Juneteenth celebration. What inspired me to become a member of the family business is my dad just had such an impact on me when I came up, and I really can remember going with him to so many events. My dad was out in the public a lot. He really loved the public, and I loved to be at his side. I was the youngest child, but our business is in the Fairfax area, the main location, and we do have a location now in Warrensville, but I can remember going to Fairfax Center as a kid and going swimming on Fridays. And, it used to be a family night. And that's where my friends and I would all pile up together and go to Fairfax. So we had my dad and I were pretty close. And, I was the baby, so, yeah, my mom, yeah. So I really love being with him. And so that's what I think I was going to college at Cleveland State at the time. And so I would take the bus from Cleveland State, and I started working with my mom. My mom started working in the business after I went into junior high school, and then just working alongside them. It just gave a sense of fulfillment. And then I never did go into the embalming side of the business and become a mortician, but I did get my funeral director's license, and I just love really being, working with the family. When my grandparents first came to Cleveland, I believe it was in the 40th and Central area, there around St. John AME Church on East 40th. I believe a lot of black people, were raised in that area. And then my grandfather, I know he lived off 105th. There were a lot of Jewish people in that area at the time, because my brother, my sister, and my parents, both parents went to Glenville. And my mom and dad, when they were at Glenville, there were a lot of Jewish people, in that area. And, well, a lot of people have asked me about the history of the building, where, of the building at 89th and Cedar. I and my sister, was really instrumental in getting this book made. But it goes back and it shows how a wealthy farmer, his name was Thomas Knight, the property was transferred to him from his parents, but the house was built in 1863, and then this gentleman transferred the property to his wife and his son, who became an established banker, a Cleveland Trust Bank. His name was T. Spencer Knight, and so Mr. Knight evidently sold the property to Howard Slaughter, they were established. He and his brothers were established funeral directors, and they were actually a member of the J. Walter Reels family. They bought the property, but Mr. Slaughter, Howard Slaughter, died unexpectedly in 1936, and his wife and family couldn't carry on the business, so they wound up selling it to my grandfather, Elmer Boyd, and the property transferred in 1939. And my dad joined the business, I believe, in 1938, and worked alongside of his dad until 1944 and his mom. And then they took the business, carried the business from there till my grandmother died in 1960. And my mom came into the business in 1966. My brother, not long after that, then he became dual licensed. I came in 72. My sister, 82, and then each one of their children came in. My sister has a daughter, my brother has a daughter who followed. So yes, the 4 generations. So it's just the history, learning all this background. This book it's been quite inspiring. And again, my sister had a friend who looked into it, and it's just great. It's really great. Okay, I would say the most memorable service I know that we took care of was for the Congresswoman Stephanie Tubbs Jones. And, her service was at Public Auditorium, and it was awe-inspiring. There were a lot of dignitaries there. I believe the former President Bill Clinton was there. I even believe Obama was there. This was before he was president. But it was just, it was spectacular. There were so many family members that we had to bring in and get seated. Everybody was organized in a separate area, and then everyone was ushered in to be seated. And then at one point during the service, my dad was there with me, and he was like not able to walk as strong and erect as he could. So I had him with me, right? And I ushered him in just before I think they were about to close the casket, and he was able to stop and pay his respects and then go back to his seat. It was just a really, well, Stephanie was at Collinwood. She was ahead of me, but yes, I knew her from Collinwood. But her parents, my dad knew both of her parents because they were going to Bethany Baptist Church. Her dad was actually a sky cap at the airport, so yeah, knew the family. And she still today has a huge impact on people. You bring her name up and people remember her. So I just used to glory in all the stuff she could do. She was just amazing individual. You know all these people you grew up with. There was Marsha Maccabee. She was with me at Collinwood. Now you see she's got a huge position with the Urban League. And all these people you just kind of came up through school with. You just never knew. And here, making very, very significant contributions, and really loved that whole experience coming up in Cleveland. I will tell you, I came up during the riots though, at Collinwood, and I can, Stephanie, all of us came through school then. I can specifically remember being charged. The kids were going through the perimeter of the school, right? They had bats in their hands, and they had stormed us going up those huge steps going into Collinwood. Wow, just never figured you'd experience something like that, but we were bussed in, right? We were bussed in from Glenville all the way out to Collinwood, and our presence was not wanted there at the time, but Anyway, that didn't stop us from moving on. And now, I kind of do the marketing for the company, and that's just my niche, following in my dad. I'm not as much of a public servant, but I definitely am involved in a lot of organizations, women organizations in the community, and I enjoy giving back, like with the Top Ladies of Distinction. And they have a Top Teens of America that they mentor teenagers. So, yes, it's a lot of things I like to be involved in. And I feel a commitment to give back. It's not enough to just sit across the table and make arrangements with the family. You got to give back to that community, and you got to have a presence and show that you really care. It's more than a transaction. It's about actually, doing for your community and making sure that people have opportunities. As a kid, I lived across the street from the Cultural Gardens, right? And you see all these different ethnic groups that are represented, but there was never anything for African Americans. So I think we deserve to be at that table. We deserve to be represented. That garden is, without a doubt, it needs to grow and it needs to be fulfilled, and we need to be proud of our heritage, just as all those other ethnic groups. And I mean, that goes without saying for me.